is, I'm sure you'll find many familiarities in your life, but let me just first say, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing. Those are words from Reverend Bruno. So I'm not real good at winging it. So I've got everything written out. I'm going to ad-lib a little bit, but this is a little bit about my story. I was born in California. My mother came from Idaho. She was a farmer's daughter. And my dad grew up in Pacific Beach, Southern California. He was a surfer. That was his life. And my mother, her mantra was like the lady from Gone with the Wind. As God is my witness, I will never go hungry. But she said, as God is my witness, I will never be poor and married to a farmer. So she came to California to find her fortune. And my dad was very practical, and but also a dreamer. He had bought his parents' business. It was called a dime store. Remember those stores like Woolworths and those Crest and those stores? This was, again, in Southern California, Pacific Beach. And at the time, there were no other stores like that in the area, and they were doing very well. So Dad came back from the war. He was going to go to college, decided, nah, I think I'll get the business and make some money. So he did. My mother walked into the store one day. They locked eyes, and 21 days later, they were married. So, I mean, those people were sure about what they were doing, I think. Not like today, certainly. So they bought a little house there. They had 3 daughters. I'm the middle daughter. And one day Dad said, we're moving to Australia. And Mom said, but I love it here. This is my life. So anyway, he got his way. We boarded the Matson ship and we went south, way down south. The first stop was Auckland, New Zealand. And we got off the ship there. They, I don't know how you do this back in the 1950s, but somehow he's a foreigner, we're all foreigners, we're trying to figure this out. They decided to stay there rather than going on to Sydney. And I never was clear about that, but that doesn't matter. We stayed in New Zealand. And New Zealand, if you know, it's a very cold and very rainy country. And this is the opposite of everything my mother wants, right? She put up for a year in this house in New Zealand. And we loved it. I mean, as kids, we would go to the beach and the water would go out miles. And we'd walk into the mud and collect those shells, remember? Yep. Anyway, it was a lovely life. The kids loved it. The parents hated it. Well, I should say they didn't care for it as much. So Mom said, we're going back to California. So 1 year later, we get on the Matson ship. We're headed north. We're headed up back to California. First stop, Honolulu, Hawaii. 1958, 1 year before statehood. Mom said, we're not going back to California. This is paradise. We're staying right here. So 3 little kids, Mom and Dad. Dad says, okay, wait right here. I'm going to go get us a place to live. So he goes off, goes into Waikiki, finds us a little apartment. We move in. That was the beginning of my life in Hawaii. That's my home. That's what I claim. I was 6 years old. My sister was 2 years older. Baby sister was 2 or 3 years younger. And so from a modest beginning, Dad took jobs everywhere he could until he wanted to have his own business again. So he started a wholesale hardware and fiberglass and resin business. And in those days, again, perfect timing, there was no competition, very little competition. So Sand Island, my friend Mari knows where that is. He had a warehouse, he had employees, and all of a sudden we're getting money. Mom's, putting away every little penny. And so she doesn't look in the, the poor section of town. She looks in the richest part of town to buy a house. This is Diamond Head. We're talking mansions up there, okay? She buys a house. I don't know how she did it. She buys a house. Actually, he had a piece of property in California. She did some finagling. We got that house. Beautiful place. The beach is 2 blocks away. We go swimming, learning how to surf and be in the water. Dad teaches us everything about the water. Okay, so that's our life in my younger years. School, graduation, and when I was 18, I got on a ship, and this was a university out of, it was Chapman College out of California, and my heart wanted to see the world. And you could do that on this ship, and you could also get sort of an education, if you know what I mean. This was, the 1970s. So I traveled around the world on this ship, and I got a taste of what it was like to be independent, see the world, learn other cultures. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. And the last stop was Morocco, and I got off the ship there, and then my boyfriend came from Hawaii. We toured Europe. So by 18 years old, I've seen the world. So that was my early life. Moved back to Honolulu and went to the University of Hawaii, graduated from School of Dental Hygiene, part of the nursing program. And that's where I found out I loved science and helping people. And then got hired with Pan Am as a flight attendant, helping people, travel. Ooh, those are all high on my list. And a few years later, I met and married a Mississippi boy. Wouldn't you know it? So we moved to Ocean Springs in 1987, and his family is from Ocean Springs. They're with Shearwater Pottery. That's their clan. And I thought life was pretty good. I had one little boy and one on the way. But I didn't understand what I understand now. Life is based on the soul's need for experience. And how does it do this? Expression, experimentation, integration, and transcendence. So given this, I was given this graphic image of how that works, which I can't really do here, but it's just about expanding and contracting, reintegration. So the soul puts you on these paths to have these experiences. What is it that I need to learn in this lifetime? Well, here you go. Well, let's do this. So I had a lot of them. Well, I'm sure everybody has, right? Nobody is unscathed in this world because that's what we learn here. Hardship, pain, but also beautiful things too. Love and family and all of those things. So here was my contract. The soul contract. Rebel. Victim. Okay, so here I was, the rebel. I was okay with being different. I didn't follow the rules of the crowd. I learned courage from my dad. He said, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Try new things. Henry Ford said, failure is the only opportunity you make to more intelligently begin again. How about that? Henry Ford. I bet he made a few mistakes. I think we all have. I don't think you get out of this lifetime without. Okay, so it's the 1960s. We were hippies. We were the counterculture. We were everything against the war. That was a primary theme in the 60s. So I grew up with that understanding. We tried new things, lots of new things, lots of altered states of consciousness through chemistry. Chemistry, plants. Okay, so this was the first time I found unconditional love. Everything about my mother was conditional. You are welcome and you are accepted and you are valuable if. It was always if. Okay, so I found this first spiritual awakening. I didn't know how to label it. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that it was fine. So I did not have any religious upbringing. I did go to a private Baptist school when I was in the 8th grade, but that place made no sense to me. They talked about, oh, God and this and that and the other thing, and you got to do this, and if you don't follow this, then you're going to go to a bad place. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. Okay, so I had a grandmother. I was very close to her, and when I was 21 years old, she sent me a subscription, the Daily Word. I knew nothing about unity. I knew nothing about this world that it talked about, but it made sense to me, everything it said. So going on. Oh, and my grandfather, I found out, was a Freemason.
Really?
Do you know anything about the Masons?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't know him that well. I was closer to my grandmother. Anyway, so life goes on. And I had an experience early on with my dad. He had a really terrible accident. We were in the emergency room. He had done some damage to his neck, and we were fearful that he was going to, well, I should say, my sister, my mother, they were crying desperately. They were saying things like, he's going to die, he'll never walk again. And something in me, and it wasn't me, said, stop. This is not true. He will walk again, and he was not going to die. And it wasn't me. And it was really the first time I heard kind of what we think of as soul talk, because it just came out of my mouth, and I knew in my heart that what they were saying was not true.
What year was that, Joan?
In the 70s.
Okay,
yeah,
that's close enough.
Yeah, I can't remember the dates. Anyway, so all of these things I'm talking to you about, these are my what we call light qualities. Okay, now let's go to victimhood. These are all the dark stuff you don't want to talk about or think about or acknowledge, but here they are. So my childhood was perfect for this because we choose, I believe, our childhood, our parents, our environment, and these people were perfect. They gave me everything I needed for this victimhood. So mother was a bully, and she loved, like I said, conditionally, but I needed that. That's part of my journey here. So I wasn't allowed to express my feelings, my opinions, my ideas, unless they agreed with hers. So I kept my eyes focused inward. That's what a victim does. It's me, it's my fault, what did I do? Anytime any kind of confrontation came up, it was always, oh, what did I do? Mm-hmm. I must have done something wrong, right. That sort of thing. I felt powerless and all of those things. So I was really introverted, shy, afraid to speak up. I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, all those things we tell ourselves. And I stayed there for a really long time, really way too long. Through my first marriage, I was the good wife, but experience after experience, soul provided a chance for me to wake up from this dream. And finally, I got my proverbial 2x4. Okay. I lost custody of my children. I was validated. I'm not good enough. Well, I did eventually get them back. And so pain and suffering, that's kind of part of the journey, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So there was a turning point. Instead of staying in this miserable state, I started using these qualities, not as seeing them as shadow, but as gifts. When we see the dark side, the shadows, the things that we're afraid of to confront, those become our ticket to higher consciousness. So, what did I do? Study foreign languages. Foreign languages. I'm going to speak in front of 400 people on an airplane. Okay? Mm-hmm. Using my voice. Learning to play the guitar again and sing. Self-expression, again, using my voice. With a chorale, so on and so forth. I found unity in 1999. Of course, it's like coming home. We all say that, right? It's like coming home. And I returned to those principles that I had learned all those years ago that my grandmother was trying to convey to me in the daily word. And then there was a great big shift that happened in 2017. This was a chronic health condition. I think you remember, Judy.
Mm-hmm. I do.
And soul always uses illness when there's a time for transition, change, it's like a reset. And soul said, okay, it's not enough to go to church and say you believe in God and say you have a spiritual understanding. You have to live these principles. So I began daily meditation, studying, writing, speaking, and learning the principles of esoteric spirituality. Mm-hmm. Again, developing my voice, reconnection to soul, that experience of unconditional love that I experienced as a young woman. I had my expression, my experimentation. It was time for integration and transcendence. So what was the spark? You're going to like this.
Okay.
One day, in Judy's message, she says, and she's talking about 40 ways to become spiritually enlightened. She says, you can go to Reiki, you can go to Rolfing, you can go to past life regression, you can go to Est, you can go to hypnosis, you can go to transcendental meditation, yoga, tai chi, and the list went on. Remember that?
Uh-huh.
And she said, don't go wider, go deeper. And I did. I finally understood what I needed to do. Mm-hmm. So what did I learn? It doesn't matter what your childhood was, or if you look back on those experiences and know that you volunteered for this. All of these experiences were your personal gifts. And like Tammy said, I wish she was here, it doesn't matter. I would not be who I am today if not for those things that happened to me.
Right.
So thank your parents for who they were and what they were for you. I know there's brutality, child abuse. I am sorry for this. But just know you're fulfilling your soul contract just as you are. You are right where you are meant to be. And with each turn of the wheel, we're moving upward in our evolution. One soul-inspired lifetime at a time. Mm. So I'm going to leave you with a few words of wisdom to live by. Don't be afraid to change your mind or make mistakes. Don't be afraid to speak your truth. Don't hang on to people and things too tightly. They are only temporary. I think Kahlil Gibran said that, especially your kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't let others define who and what you are. Only you can set the course for your life. And when you give up the need to judge others, like you were saying, Judy, you will find true liberation. I have one more thing to say before we end. I know you've all seen the footage of the destructive fires in Hawaii, on Maui. I'd like to ask from my heart that you find a way to donate, and if you can't donate, please pray for the families, thousands of people that are displaced and in shelters, hopefully in shelters. There is a great aloha spirit in the islands, and I know that people are taking in people they don't even know, but find a way. If nothing else, please pray. Thank you.
That's beautiful, Joan. We thank you so much. I do have one other question, though. You're not off the hook yet.
Oh, okay.
I know that you began to receive messages at some point from your higher self or a higher being. And tell us how you do that. Was it through going into the stillness and the quiet? You did it enough that you were able to release the intellect and allow a higher.
I'm laughing because they, and I always say they, I don't know why, it just comes out as they. They said to me this morning, they said, when you're chattering too much, that we can't get a word in edgewise. So, and as it happens during the day, I mean, that's how our minds work, right? We're always
Yes.
thinking. We're thinking about the future, or we're thinking about the past. And I had to laugh because it's so true. But the voice, back to what you're asking, Judy, it just going into the silence in meditation, allowing not my mind, but the higher mind, as you're saying, to speak. And it's available. It's, we're swimming in this consciousness. We just have to still the mind, and that ego voice that kind of wants to barge in all the time and chatter all the time. So I can't give you a how-to other than just be still, and like they say in the Bible, be still and know. So
Absolutely.
that's all I got.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Joan. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.